Reflect in English podcast.
Welcome back to Reflect in English podcast. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Patrick. It's great to have you with us again.
Today, we're going to talk about something we all know too well. Those moments when a conversation just dies.
We've all been there. I remember the other day, I ran into my former boss at a cafe. We were chatting about work, the weather, all the usual stuff. And then suddenly, nothing. He looked at his coffee, I looked at the window, and for about 5 seconds, nobody spoke. I could literally hear the air buzzing around us, and I thought, wow, this is awkward.
Feels uncomfortable, doesn't it? What's interesting is that silence itself isn't inherently bad, but our minds interpret it as social failure. Those awkward pauses. Today, we're going to explore the science behind them and how you can not only survive them, but maybe use them to your advantage even if you're learning English.
So if you've worried, oh no, I've killed the conversation, stick around. By the end, you'll realize silence isn't the enemy you think it is.
Let's start with the psychology. Human beings are wired to seek social connection. Silence threatens that connection because it feels like disapproval or distance.
Exactly. Our brains are prediction machines. In conversation, we constantly anticipate what the other person will say and when we can jump in. If the rhythm breaks, our prediction fails, and the uncertainty makes us uncomfortable.
And for language learners, it's even more intense. If you're speaking in your second language, you often need extra time to translate or find the right word. That processing pause may feel like a chasm, even if it's just 2 seconds.
Yes, it's not just cognitive load, it's also social anxiety. You think, oh no, they'll judge me, they'll lose interest, which only makes the silence longer because your brain is panicking instead of searching for words.
There's also a cultural element. Some cultures are more tolerant of silence. Some are not. In American small talk, silence can feel like rejection.
That's so true. I grew up in the US, and I was taught that a good conversationalist keeps the ball rolling, always add something, always respond quickly. So silence was basically treated as failure.
And yet, psychologists say a short silence can be healthy. It gives our brains space to process. In fact, studies suggest that pauses help memory. Listeners remember more when the speaker occasionally pauses.
So the paradox is, silence is good for comprehension and reflection, but socially we fear it. That's why we call it awkward silence.
And understanding this paradox is step 1. Once we accept that silence isn't always bad, we can start using it strategically instead of fearing it. Patrick, people usually think awkward silences are just a social issue, but there's actually a lot happening linguistically too.
Exactly. Conversations aren't random. They follow structures, like hidden rules. And silence plays a role in those rules.
Yes, the first rule is turn-taking. Every language community has signals for who speaks when. And in English, we rely heavily on subtle signals, lowering intonation, slight pauses, even eye contact to show we've finished our turn. If you miss these cues, which language learners often do, the rhythm breaks, and that's when the silence can feel awkward.
Or the opposite. 2 people jump in at once, then both retreat out of politeness. That creates a mini silence too. It's almost comic. Oh, you go. No, you go. And then, pause.
Exactly. So silence can simply be a coordination issue. And for learners, observing these subtle cues is important.
Another dimension is prosody and pauses. Not all silences are awkward. Sometimes a pause gives weight to what you're saying. That's not awkwardness.
But many learners fear pausing. When they pause due to language issues, they might start to panic, making the silence feel awkward. For learners, one piece of advice is own the pause. If you need to think, breathe, hold your space. Don't be afraid to pause.
And this is where cross-cultural pragmatics becomes essential. Different cultures judge silence very differently. In some cultures, people can sit together in silence and feel totally comfortable. In some other cultures, silence might be read as disinterest. And in American culture, too much silence often feels like a breakdown of rapport.
Yes, so when English learners worry about silence, it's partly because English-speaking contexts have low tolerance for it. But if they come from cultures where silence signals respect or thoughtfulness, they may unintentionally clash with expectations.
Which shows silence itself isn't universal. It's cultural.
Which leads us to another concept, repair mechanisms. When silence does happen, people often repair the conversation. For example, sorry, or wait, give me a second to think. Or you might invite the other person. What do you think?
Yes, it's collaborative. A friend might even jump in with a helpful question. Repair turns silence into teamwork rather than failure.
When we see silence as part of the system, not an error, we handle it with more confidence.
Silence isn't emptiness. It's information.
All right, so we've looked at the psychology and the linguistics, but listeners are probably wondering, what do I actually do when silence hits?
Yes, this is the practical toolkit part. And the first step is mindset. If you panic, the silence grows heavier. But if you breathe and accept it, the tension eases. Think of silence as a pause in music. Without pauses, the melody would be noise.
I love that metaphor. Silence can be part of the rhythm, not a mistake. For learners, I'd suggest a mental shift. Instead of thinking, I failed, think, I'm giving space. That little reframe can reduce the anxiety.
Exactly. Strategy number 2 is preparing safe topics. Awkward silences often happen because you've exhausted one subject. If you have a few pocket topics ready, hobbies, travel, food, movies, you can smoothly restart the flow.
Right, and these don't have to be profound. Small talk might seem trivial, but it functions as social glue. In fact, sociolinguists call it phatic communication, language that builds connection more than information.
And when you want to transition, you can use bridging questions. For example, that reminds me, how did you first get into, or speaking of that, have you ever tried? These not only restart the conversation, but also hand the other person the floor.
Yes, and the beauty is that questions shift focus away from you. Asking open-ended questions buys you space while showing interest.
Now, strategy 3, embrace micro-silences with confidence. If there's a brief gap, don't rush to fill it with nervous chatter. Hold eye contact, smile, maybe nod. These signals communicate, I'm comfortable here. And often, the other person will pick up the cue.
And this is especially useful in professional settings. Imagine you're in a job interview. A thoughtful pause after a question makes you look reflective, not clueless. The difference lies in body language and intention.
That's a key point. Silence plus tension equals awkward. Silence plus calm equals authority.
Beautifully put. Now, strategy 4 is self-repair. If you really lose your words, you can narrate it. Let me think how to explain this, or that's a good question. Give me a second. These phrases normalize the pause.
Yes, it's like turning the silence into dialogue. Instead of being stuck in your head, you invite the listener into your thought process. It makes the pause cooperative, not isolating.
And here's something practical for language learners. Practice these pause phrases in advance. Write down a few lines you feel comfortable with. Use them until they become natural. Then, when silence arrives, you won't freeze.
And finally, strategy 5, listen actively. Often silence happens because both people are waiting for the other. If you show strong listening signals, nodding, summarizing what they said, or asking follow-ups, you prevent the silence from becoming heavy.
Yes, and it's also about generosity. You can help with a gentle bridge. So you mean, or that's interesting because that's a gift.
So if we put it all together, shift your mindset, don't fear silence, prepare pocket topics, embrace pauses with confidence, use repair phrases, listen actively and generously.
And the magic is, once you stop fearing silence, you actually experience it less, because confidence itself fills the space.
Exactly. Silence loses its sting when you realize it's just another part of human interaction.
You know, Patrick, the more we talk about silence, the more I feel it's not really the enemy we think it is. It's almost like a mirror. It reflects how comfortable we are with ourselves and with others.
That's a beautiful way to put it. If you're at peace with yourself, a pause doesn't scare you. But if you're insecure, the pause feels like exposure. It's like, oh no, they'll see I don't have anything to say, and that makes me super uncomfortable.
Exactly. And that's why I believe learning to embrace silence is also a journey of self-confidence. For language learners, it's not just about English. It's about giving yourself permission to be imperfect, to take space, to exist without constant performance.
Yes, silence is not failure. It's part of the conversation. Even in your first language, you pause, you hesitate, you rephrase. Why should a second language be any different?
Exactly. When you accept it, you build resilience and confidence.
Silence teaches patience, humility, even presence. When we stop rushing to fill every gap, we allow real connection to emerge. Some of the most intimate moments in friendship are shared silences.
Yes, there's a saying, comfortable silence is a sign of true connection. If you can sit with someone without words and still feel close, that's powerful.
And the same is true when you're learning English. The goal isn't to talk endlessly without a pause. The goal is to connect. Sometimes that connection happens in words, sometimes in silence.
I think that's the inspiring takeaway here. Don't measure your success in English by how perfectly you avoid silence. Measure it by whether you keep showing up, keep engaging, keep listening, and keep allowing yourself space to grow.
Yes, embrace silence, embrace imperfection, embrace the humanity of communication. That's far more valuable than trying to be flawless.
So, if you're listening right now and you felt embarrassed by an awkward silence, please remember, you're not alone. Even native speakers stumble, pause, lose track, or sit in silence. It doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human.
And being human is the whole point of language, to connect, not to perform. So, we have traveled quite a journey today.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who are learning English, next time you find yourself in a pause, don't panic. Try one of the strategies we shared today, or simply breathe and remind yourself that silence is allowed.
Before we go, I just want to say thank you for joining us on this journey of reflection. We aim to give you tools not only to improve your English, but also to reflect on life itself. Because language is never just grammar or vocabulary. It's about presence, confidence, connection, and yes, even silence.
So until next time, embrace the pauses, trust yourself to handle them, and keep reflecting in English.
We'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.